May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be always acceptable to thee, O God. While seeing some of the trailers of the newest Star Wars movie, it got me to remember the first movie. If you remember, a ship carrying Princess Leia is about to be boarded by Darth Vader. The Rebel Alliance is desperate, and all of the Jedi, all but one, were killed. In a last-ditch effort for survival, Leia sends out a secret message to this relic of stability, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The message reaches Obi-Wan, and the last 3 lines of the message are as follows. This is our most desperate hour. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You are our only hope. Obi-Wan Kenobi was the last resort. The Alliance was in desperate need of a game-changing event to survive. And what needs do we have? How and where is God our only hope? All of our readings today deal with human need. The common thread for us is that all of us are in need. We are in desperate need of something, but often we don't know or recognize what that need is and why we need it. We often mistake our wants and desires as important events. We allow our emotions to wreak havoc on our reason and distort our view of reality. There is hope, though, always in the always faithful love and presence of God. The first reading tells of David's intention to build a house for God, but God has other plans. He tells David that in no way has God ever asked for a permanent structure, from the time of the Exodus to David's present time. However, God now tells David that this is your life story. I took you from the pasture, from following the sheep, to be prince over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you went. I have cut off your enemies before you, and I will make for you a great name, like the name of the great ones of the earth. And I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and I will plant them, so that they may live in their own place and be disturbed no more. God concludes with telling David that God will now build David a house, and that his descendants will build a house for God that will last forever. And that, of course, is Jesus. And as Jesus says in the Gospel of John, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Then they said, well, it's taken 46 years to build this temple, and how will you raise it up in 3 days? But Jesus was speaking of the temple of his body. Through Jesus, God has established his everlasting temple in our hearts. The second reading Paul tells the crowd that Jesus is the bridge that connects us all to God. For he is our peace. In his flesh, he has made both groups into one, not just both, many groups into one, and has broken down the dividing wall. That is the hostility between us all. He has abolished the law with his commandments and ordinances, that he might create one new humanity in place of two, thus making peace, and might reconcile both groups to God in one body through the cross, thus putting to death the hostility through it. Paul concludes by saying that together we grow into a holy temple in the Lord as a dwelling place for God. And in our gospel reading, it starts with the disciples telling Jesus all that they had done after they had been commissioned by him to go out and preach and heal. Crowds were now following them because the disciples had told of Jesus, and they wanted more. And Jesus tells the disciples, come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while. They need rest to recover. And Jesus knows this. But the crowds are still demanding and seem to follow him wherever they go. Wherever they might go, even across the Sea of Galilee. The disciples need some rest, and the crowd needs healing. And Jesus responds to both. Sometimes we are the crowd, swarming Jesus in needs of spiritual healing. And sometimes we are more like the disciples, needing quiet and rest in the spiritual presence of Jesus. And I want to assure us of his presence, of his work in our lives. That's the importance of Christian brothers and sisters. I may not be able to see what God is doing in my life. I may sometimes even doubt that he is here. But Lori can tell me, Jesus is here, don't be afraid. Jeff can say, I see him at work in our lives. Randy can remind me daily in his script bits, Jesus is here. And Patricia and Ian can remind me that even in calamity, Jesus is here, supporting them in their need. We are meant to be the temple of God, not the one that David wanted to build, but the one that God wanted. The imagery of the temple is powerful and is similar to that of the parables of the sower of seeds. Our lives are to be like a temple of God's abundant love, and that the overflow is not for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others. To put it another way, the unity of the church for which Paul prays is for the well-being of the world. Our life together as a church, both as individuals and community, is always to be lived in order to bring others into a relationship with God. Try including this prayer every day for the next month. And yes, the words are borrowed from Princess Leia, but truth is truth. This day may be my darkest hour. Help me, Lord. You're my only hope. Our need is not for manna or mammon, but for Emmanuel, for the presence of God to permeate our lives, that we can bring others to know God by our words and deeds. We can say to those in need, Christ is here. Don't be afraid. Amen.
Amen.